Yo, the wait is over. We've waited 238 days for this, but it's finally happened. I think Bitcoin has finally broken the consolidation of the last 6 months. We're sitting pretty at $72,606. Bitcoin has finally reclaimed the 72K region. Last time we were at these levels was back in March. But if history repeats, ladies and gentlemen, I think the next 10 to 18 months is going to be very, very, very special for Bitcoin. Guys, we have an incredible show lined up for you guys today. We have our special guest and, of course, my legendary co-host. Our special guest today is Frank Holmes. Frank Holmes is the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. We're going to talk about that, all stuff Bitcoin mining later on the show. And, of course, my legendary co-host, who's always optimistic, Optimus Fields. Frank, I mean, as a Bitcoin miner, today is very special. With finally these 6 months.
All-time high. The bulls are up. Oh!
We've put in the work. We've paid our dues. We've plugged in the miners, and finally, I think we're getting rewarded for it. How does this feel? I'm so happy that you came on today's episode. Today's episode was the breakout day special. So, how you doing, Frank?
I feel blessed. I'm blessed to be with you guys. You all have great energy, and it is an all-time high. And I started this journey in 2017.
Wow, I mean we come a long way. I mean, I think Opti, pretty sure that's when we started, right? Yep. That we were from that era. But just to kind of give you guys a perspective, I was looking at some data by a friend of ours, Charts. I'm going to pull this up. Opti shared this with me this morning. I thought it was really interesting. At this point, 4 years ago, Bitcoin rocketed past 13K, boosted by a wave of extreme leverage that took it past 60K. This time we have ETFs with options. The trajectory may be different, but the rocket still looks ready to launch. Buckle up. And I think this is what a lot of us are feeling. By the way, it's charts.
Hey, wait, Nico, click that chart so people can see it better.
Sure. Here we go. There you go. And just to kind of give you guys, it gives you guys different perspectives on where Bitcoin was in different markets. And also, Charts BTC isn't the only one saying this. We have the real Plan C. It says, congratulations, you survived 8 months of consolidation. Your reward, 150K to 300K within the next 10 to 18 months. So I think a lot of people are feeling this anticipation for 2025, especially, this election that's coming up next week or so, which should be interesting from a regulatory perspective for Bitcoin. It seems like all the stars and planets are aligning for this explosive 2025. Frank, what are you anticipating from the perspective of the CEO of one of the largest Bitcoin mining companies in the world? How are you anticipating 2025? Or are you taking every single day by day?
I'm in inch by inch, everything's a cinch. And we're just very pragmatic of how we built Hive. We function in 9 time zones, and we still come out as the most efficient miner. We have to translate in 4 different languages, going to 5 for audit reasons, etc. We still come out as the most efficient miner. So I'm really proud of what the team has done. We hold Bitcoin. We only source green energy, hydro and geothermal to mine our Bitcoin. And I believe that over time, those Bitcoins will have an intrinsic greater value because they've never been into cyberspace and they've come from the original green energy. And that to me is like buying a Picasso or buying an Andy Warhol piece of art.
I love that. And let's talk about that, Frank, because I think if you consume certain types of media, I'll frame it that way. They would like to make you believe that Bitcoin mining could potentially be, hurtful to the environment. But it seems like you've built an entire company that is only using renewable energies or green energy to mine said Bitcoin. What could we do as a community to get that message out there? Because I'm seeing it from a Bitcoiner's perspective. I would say Bitcoin allows the rollout of green renewable energy without the need for government subsidy. I would say it's good for the green energy industry, the renewable energy industry. This industry, let's just say it wouldn't be able to survive on its own without government subsidy. Bitcoin miners come in and they say, you know what? we have another use case. We're providing another use case, right? So, Frank, could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, it's a great question. You know, in the journey of me being the co-founder of launching Hive, I'm a money manager, and I'm known for the world of gold. So it was easy for me to see that the Bitcoiners really read from the Old Testament, that gold bugs do, that over time governments will devalue the fiat currency. And it's just a matter of who does it faster, and the damage it does to societies. But I in that journey, I tried to learn about Bitcoin, and when I went to launch, I realized I couldn't launch an ETF. There was no way the SEC in 2017, due to KYC and AML concerns, was going to let it happen. I went to Canada, same thing, great concern. But when you're a Bitcoin miner, you're mining the virgin coin. You don't have a KYC and you don't have an AML problem. And I can turn around and mine that and put it on my balance sheet, green and clean coin. So I said, okay, I'll put up the money to launch this. Immediately, institutions came behind. Fidelity, in the first 2 months, gave us $100 million. Other institutions ended up giving us another 100, and Hive became the darling that was first crypto mining company to go public. Then we saw many companies go public. Since then, I think there's over 20. But we've stayed very green, and that's been hard. It's been a challenge to find big green energy in a jurisdiction that recognizes what we do.
Yeah,
what we have done that's really significant is in 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle in Sweden, we have basically like a little ecosystem that the biggest sport there is hockey. They have 3 NHL players that have won Stanley Cups. There are local heroes. So we sponsor 12 kids teams and the arena. So we have funded the expansion of the arena, and we're working on a Bitcoin modular unit to heat the arena because we're only 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. So we have done that in funding gaming, the gaming industry that's up there. Facebook is only 30 miles away, and it's the largest data center in all of Europe. So it's near the university. It's just a perfect little environment. We've done that again in other places where we sponsor the culture that's in that community. And so we've really been thoughtful that they like to call sometimes an ESG strategy. Well, we've done that from day one. We are proud that we have the lowest G&A to mine Bitcoin. We only mine with green and clean energy. And we've also repurposed in Montreal, we heat a building. It's a 40,000 square foot building that was in the graphite business. We repurposed that, and now we heat a building 200,000 square feet with 170 workers making whirlpools. So that same molecule of energy that mines the Bitcoin then transfers and heats a fluid that goes over and basically radiators. For those in the South, don't use radiators to heat their house. But in the North, it's a must. And so that's what we do. And so we have shown that, and we were the first to balance the grid. Now, Riot gets a lot of great publicity in Texas for doing it, but we've been able to do it in Sweden for many years, where we help the community, and the utility company doesn't have to spend a lot of money building another dam when everyone in the morning turns on their toasters and has a hot shower or comes home from work. We're able in seconds to go from literally 15 seconds from 30 megawatts to 3, while everyone turns on their toasters, and then crank it back up. And so we use that surplus energy, which generates hundreds of thousands of dollars a month of revenue for that community. And it also saves the utility company. So I'm very proud of the question you asked, is that we've been that sort of good poster child for that.
I love that. It's really interesting, and I think it's something unique to proof of work mining, right? Because you have all this. A lot of people don't understand this, right? One of the misconceptions that you hear is that Bitcoin mining uses a lot of energy. It's like, what energy is Bitcoin mining using? Bitcoin monetizes otherwise stranded energy sources. And that's the big breakthrough. And you're going to start to see a lot of innovation based off that just one idea, because you have all this energy all around the world, but it's isolated. It's far away from population centers. It's far away from, just big energy hoggers. And this energy would otherwise go to waste. And all of a sudden, Bitcoin miners come in and they say, you know what? We're going to turn that into sweet, sweet Satoshis. And they monetize that energy. And people have been coming up with very, very clever ways. Like Frank just brought up a couple of examples, but you hear these stories about these greenhouses being warmed by Bitcoin miners. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that? What's the downside? There is none.
Same molecule of energy.
Exactly. Anyways, guys, it's going to be a great show. I want to get Opti's thoughts on this. We're going to move on to the numbers segment. The numbers segment, we're going to talk about you guys love this. You were making fun of me when I brought it up yesterday, but I'm bringing it up again. We have Frank in the house, the Bitcoin Overton window. And guys, we've made so much progress on this. Of course, El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender, the ETFs, the legitimization of Bitcoin in the eyes of legacy finance this year. It happened this year. Of course, Michael Saylor's Bitcoin strategy. So many things have been happening, and that's slowly been moving the Overton window. But it seems like we're all from the same class, the class of 2016, 2017. Boy, oh boy, were things different back then. We've made a lot of progress in Bitcoin in the world of mining, and I just want to kind of recap that. So anyway, Opti, do you have some thoughts before we move on?
Well, I really just want to give everyone in the chat a pat on the back, or rather pat yourselves on the back. It has been, a long sideways action. I know everyone's getting testy out there on Twitter. It's like, when is this price going to do something? It's literally the Bitcoin meme of just like poking the Bitcoin or like, do something. When are you going to do something? And now we get a little pump. I mean, Nico and I were kind of joking yesterday. It's like, man, I think I'm dead inside because I don't feel anything. And now that Bitcoin starts pumping again, we're like, okay, we're back. This is why we're here. Okay, this is fun again. It's going to get really fun. And really, I think realistically speaking, once we break out, I think the all-time high in like March was around like 73.6 or something like that. So I'm kind of eyeing that once we break past that 74K area, like with significant volume, significant price push, we're in price discovery mode, and we might just teleport up to 100K very quickly. So this is the best time to be a Bitcoiner. It's always the funnest when the price starts running. And I think this time around, considering all the things we've been talking about on the show all year, and I kind of got a sneak peek of what Frank might tell us in the culture today, I think price discovery this time around, I don't think we're going to get a 2020-ish run. We're not. I think this time might be different. I think we're going to see some incredible price movements. As Samson Mao's been saying, we might be seeing Omega candles finally. We might be in Omega candle territory. It does seem like the fiat apocalypse. The fiat system is crumbling. We know about the mainstream media. They're kind of capitulating against independent content creators. And it really does seem like Bitcoin is finally entering that hyper Bitcoinization era. And I think the next 4 years in Bitcoin is going to be very incredible. It really reminds me of the meme of, you overestimate what you can do in 2 years, but you underestimate what you can do in 10 years, and just kind of, collapsing that a little bit. I think even us Bitcoiners, we still have PTSD. And I think we're underestimating what can happen in the next 4 years of this next, seemingly next 4 year Bitcoin cycle. I hate to be the guy here just because the price is pumping a little bit, but man, are we entering super cycle territory? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just giving the hopium today, but yeah, man, I'm excited. It feels good. It feels good to be back, Nico.
It's going to be a great show. All right, there's 1,200 of you guys watching live. You guys are enjoying the show so far. Make sure to smash that like button. Of course, consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin. It's going to be a great show, ladies and gentlemen. Strap in, sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. Anyways, before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. To get started, scan the QR code or go to bitcoinwell.com. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada, the USA. Put in your email address, takes 2 to 5 minutes to sign up, and bada bing, bada boom, you'll buy automatic self-custody Bitcoin. What does automatic self-custody means? It means every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. Makes the platform very, very unique. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, also when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn something called Bitcoin Well points, and you could redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest, which we'll do live for you guys right now. We'll toss a coin into the Wishing Well, get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 500 Satoshis. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. We have lots to talk about. Let's check it out. All right, before we get to the numbers, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Stamp your generational wealth on titanium. Don't write down your seed phrase on pieces of paper. Stamp it into a plate of titanium, and that's exactly what the Stamp Seed titanium seed phrase storage kit will enable you to do. Comes with the letter stamping tools, comes with the hammer, it comes with the titanium plates. This is the proper way to store your generational wealth. If you use promo code SIMPLY, you get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $72,570. Sats per dollar, 1,378. Block height, 867,952. Realized monetary inflation, 1.26%. Market cap, 1.44 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 7.52%. Money supply, 19,774,633 BTC. Percentage issued, 94.16%. We're just getting the party started. Anyways, like I mentioned in the intro, today I want to talk about the Overton window. I know you guys were making fun of me yesterday when I brought it up, but Elon brought it up. That's why I brought it up yesterday. And then when I saw this, I'm like, I have to bring it up today again. So what are we going to talk about today during the numbers? We're going to talk about the Bitcoin Overton window. And the person who tweeted this said, think about how far we've come in 15 years. Consider the Bitcoin Overton window continuing to shift towards hyper Bitcoinization. The future is speculative for sure, but this is not an asset that you want to be short. As institutions purchase and hold for the long term, the BTC available to trade will shrink as the institutions put their holding into deep cold storage. Demand increasing meets shrinking supply equals parabolic price rise. Act accordingly. And here it shows, what has happened really. So in the beginning, right? So the Overton window, for anyone who doesn't know, is the acceptable window of discourse. And our jobs as Bitcoin content creators, as Bitcoin entrepreneurs, as Bitcoin miners is, of course, move that Overton window. So a lot of these concepts go from unthinkable to policy. If I would have told you that Bitcoin was going to be made legal tender in El Salvador, you would have laughed me out of the room. If I told you that the ETF was going to be approved, you would have laughed me out of the room, right? So this is what I'm talking about. If you would have told me that the former president of the United States, potentially future president of the United States, would have gone on stage and told everybody that Bitcoin was going to be potentially a strategic reserve asset, you would have laughed me out of the room. So this is very important, right? And it's very important that this continues to shift in our favor like it has been. That's my 2 sats. And I'm going to kind of take it back a little bit and talk about the past, because it wasn't always like this. I remember back in 2016, 2017, when I got into the industry, things were very, very different. Frank, you're going to appreciate this. I got in the era of the S9. You remember the S9? Legendary ASIC, legendary machine. Things were very, very different back then. You could plug an S9 into your home outlet and it would work. So, now you need kind of like, dedicated infrastructure for mining. I mean, technically you could still do it at home. I just don't recommend it. So things have obviously...
You have 2 cent electricity.
There you go. Yeah. Or you could just blow out your socket, which I've done many times. But yeah, it's things have obviously changed. Bitcoin mining has obviously become a lot more efficient. It's scaled. It's become more worldwide. I think after the China ban, it's decentralized. You can make an argument for that. A lot of those miners went to Texas specifically. That was one of the narratives that everyone was freaking out about back in 2017, the 2018 era, which was the idea of mining centralization in China. Obviously, that was debunked very, very quickly. I think you could have made the case that it cost us the 2021 bull run. You could make a case for that, but who knows? Anyways, Frank, I kind of want to look back in time, reminisce a little bit. Do you think we've made progress as the industry, as Bitcoiners, as Bitcoin miners? Do you think we've come a long way?
Oh, absolutely. If you go back and look at the world of gold stocks, and that's where I was originally known for, and And when the GLD first came out as an ETF for bullion, the regulatory world used to be so harsh on any gold fund manager. You're buying gold stocks, they're all scams, they're all bad, etc. But when the GLD came out, the tone changed. It wasn't that the industry is bad. It was, well, make sure you've got clean accounting, clean this, clean that. And I think that that's very significant for the Bitcoin miners with the unbelievable success of the Bitcoin ETFs. As you recall, I was trying to launch this Bitcoin ETF, and I was fortunate to go, I think, create Hive. It's how long has it taken? Well, during that journey, it's taken so many setbacks, like China. It's so resilient. What people don't realize is there's 195 countries in the world, say 195 central banks, but there's over 18,000 nodes working 24/7, validating and supporting the ecosystem. So that system may get dented in one country like it was in China, and all of a sudden it moves and it gets adapts. And that's very much the biological models of the sort of complex adaptive system. It's already there, and Bitcoin is part of one of the key case studies. It'll be written in 10 years from now, how that complex adaptive system morphs and adapts. And you get great companies like Jeff Bezos. He started out selling books. Look what he's become. And now his biggest cash flow is data centers. Well, if you're a Bitcoin miner, you're really in the data center business. If you go in the AI, you're in the data center business. He has morphed from selling books to now being a hyperscaler of incredible scale. So I think that that's what Bitcoin, no CEO, no board of directors, has grown to almost $1.5 trillion asset class in less than 15 years is incredible.
100%. Frank, you said something really interesting earlier, which is you came from the gold world. You were known for that. You wrote. Do you think that played a role in you being able to identify the opportunity in Bitcoin early on?
I think so. As Steve Jobs always said, that you've got to have these different loves and different passions, and then try to connect the dots. And can you connect the dots? And the other big part of that journey was recognizing in 2017 that the CEO of Fidelity, with almost $4 trillion in assets, she doesn't speak at investment conferences. She's speaking at Consensus Crypto event in New York City. That was to me, it was like, oh wow, there's something big is happening, and seeing what was taking place there, that people were spending all this amount of money to get a ticket. You wouldn't see that at a tech conference. You wouldn't see that at an ETF conference for the retail investor. But here you had institutional retail people spending $1,000 a ticket to attend. So that was my first big wake-up call that something else is happening over here. And I started delving into the research of demographics. And that's where I realized, Hive started also mining Ethereum. Well, you have 30 million kids that have gaming GPU chips, and they go to bed and we're plugging into mine Ethereum. They generate 1 to 2 coins a year. I had a paper route. These kids are coders or gamers, and all of a sudden they're making a couple $1,000s a year off Ethereum. And to see that if they're good gamers, they were getting rewarded in digital money. Well, they're much more, their heart and brain is in sync with digital Bitcoin. It's much more than my generation as a baby boomer. They're so upset about this. How could this take place? Because they're oblivious to what's happening over here, where a kid 12 years old could be making back in 2017, making $1,000 a year and could open an account. He's 12. He can't open a bank account, but all of a sudden he could turn around and convert his Ethereum through a wallet to be able to upgrade and buy some technology. That was a big wake-up call for me when I looked at sheer numbers. And I just love the industry. I love everything it represents. In my research, what people didn't realize was that M-Pesa, you know what M-Pesa is?
M-Pesa, is that a Spanish word?
M-Pesa is like the Bitcoin for mobile operators to allow you to bank the unbankables. So a telecom company in Kenya gets this technology, and originally blockchain was created for the telecom industry. It was a timestamp mechanism for the telecom industry. And so now M-Pesa comes along, and today in Kenya, it has 51, throughout this part of Africa, 51 million users. Well, they got villages that people can't read and write, but they know enough math, but they couldn't get a bank account. And all of a sudden, they're able to use their cell phones, and it becomes the ability that's now 10% of the GDP of some of these countries in East Africa. So it comes on just before Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin comes out as really a wealth asset, not money. And it's more centralized around the telecom, but it goes to show to bank the unbankables. And Bitcoin was that way also. And so it starts to grow by the technology sector and gamers all around the world. But you can see the adoption in very poor countries. So M-Pesa was much more inclusive. Bitcoin is much more inclusive. And you and I were at this conference last week in Plan B and talk about mind-boggling numbers that in America, we complain about the dollar and now the spending, and every 100 days, $1 trillion of money printing, but the rest of the world want dollars. And last year, I was at for the weekend that Messi became the president, not Messi, the soccer player, Milei in Argentina. And that weekend, it was interesting because the ambassador for America was speaking, and he said there's $25 billion of US dollars in the pillows and mattresses in Argentina. And that's what's keeping the underground economy, is keeping the country alive, because everyone wants US dollars. It was a big number for me. I had no idea how big it was. And Buenos Aires is beautiful. It's a spectacular city. How does it function with this high inflation on the back of US dollars? And then, and that sort of, I'm trying to share with you, I know about Bitcoin. I launched Hive. I still did not know about what's taking place in places like Argentina. And now we find about Tether with 300 million wallets, they said at the conference, 300 million, the population basically of America. And it's all these countries that cannot open a US bank account. Since 2002 in Argentina, it's illegal to have a US bank account. Well, to stop this oppression, financial oppression, Tether has been the answer. So we have this digitalized growth of $120 billion of an asset class, alternative asset class. It only supports in a much more significant way the growth and potential of Bitcoin.
Of course. You know, it's the way that I see it is it like specifically with, because the original thesis was from the Bitcoin community was in developing countries, you're going to start to see the radical adoption of Bitcoin. But the free market kind of showed something else. It showed that in developing countries, what people were really adopting in a rapid scale was stablecoins. And the reason for that is that they needed something. First of all, I think the educational component to it. So if you're from Venezuela, and I'm originally from Venezuela, if you're from Venezuela, you get a $100 bill. It's like, Frank, I know it's not the same, but it's like the equivalent to holding a gold bar, right? It's very, very valuable in those countries. So what a lot of these non-sovereign alternatives provide is, instead of you going to a bank and saying, can I open a bank account? A lot of these people don't even have that possibility. They could just download an app, and all of a sudden they have access to dollars. And then I believe that eventually, once you open that door, that eventually leads to Bitcoin. And the reason for that is simple. I think Bitcoin is a superior currency. I mean, it obviously does that, right? It's obvious for anyone who's paying attention. So I think it's a kind of Trojan horse for people adopting non-sovereign alternatives, and then Bitcoin is the best non-sovereign alternative. So it's like this one-way road. But it's really, really fascinating what's happening, and it obviously makes me really optimistic for a lot of these countries, because there was no other capability or possibility for a lot of these individuals from those countries to interact with the global economy. They were just shut off. You couldn't deal with them. Forget about PayPal. Forget about Not going to happen. But with stable coins and with Bitcoin, all of a sudden you can have a bank in your pocket and you can interact with someone across the planet. You don't even need to know their name, right? It's an absolute game changer. I think a lot of people are sleeping on it. Anyways, Opti, before we move on to the next segment, what are your thoughts on this, brother?
Yeah, well, obviously I got to troll you a little bit because they're doing the Overton window drinking game in the chat right now, and we're doing the whole episode on the Overton window. But just to that point, I also got in Bitcoin in 2017, and as much as the last year or so of the sideways action, I guess it's like 2 years now, right? It's been a slow grind, and when you're just kind of zoomed in on the moment, you forget how far Bitcoin has gone throughout the 15 years of its existence. And I've been saying this for a long time on the show, and I know a lot of Bitcoiners in the chat that hang out with us are always like, okay, we don't need BlackRock, we don't need politicians. But it's become very obvious that ever since the BlackRock ETF came out, there is a sense of legitimacy coming out of the Bitcoin industry. Now Bitcoin is a political topic. It's been thrust, or rather politics has been thrusted on our doorstep. And so now Bitcoin can't just be relegated to dark corners of the internet. It has to be in everyone's portfolio, and it's becoming a legitimate conversation. And I think what we're seeing right now with the price is that once it really does do what we think it's its next leg up, everyone's going to start to pile into Bitcoin. And now it's going to become the de facto investment, the de facto portion of people's portfolios. And I just saw an interesting metric, and I know we're not the biggest fans of Coinbase here, but in March of the last all-time high, when Bitcoin hit 72K of what the last bull run one, I think the Coinbase downloads on its app was at like 24 or something as one of the top apps. And right now it's in like the 400s, it's almost like the 500th, largest downloaded app right now. And so that just goes to show you that Bitcoin is about to break all-time high. There's no retail FOMO coming in yet. This is all coming from what we would call, the smart money. The institutional managers are finally dipping their toes in Bitcoin. So once you kind of add all this stuff together, once the price does start running, we do get, price discovery mode. We have the Microsofts of the world dipping 1% into Bitcoin, and then we get retail FOMO. The Overton window is crashing. It's exploding in real time on us. And again, as I was saying earlier, and shouts out to Nolan. I was watching Nolan's show. He finally came back this morning, and he's going to rebrand his show because it's like the breakup with fiat is over. Bitcoin, and I hate to do the Bitcoin is winning, but it is winning so hard right now that mainstream is capitulating on Bitcoin. And I think like I said, the next 4 years plus is just going to be incredible in regards to the Bitcoin industry, where the industry is going to go. What that means for every one of you guys in the chat that has been holding Bitcoin for this long. I think the Overton window is done, and now Bitcoin is a legitimate thing in the world. And like I've been saying, if you fight Bitcoin, you're going to try to fight reality, and we know that never works. And now we're entering into everyone accepting reality and what it means. And it means you need to get on the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, absolutely right. Guys, we're almost at 2,000 live viewers. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, smash that like button. Consider subscribing. You're listening to Simply Bitcoin Live. We have Frank Holmes on the show today. He's currently the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. And of course, I'm here with my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. Guys, stay tuned. We still have the news segment. We're going to talk to Frank about Microsoft potentially putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And of course, all this crazy mining news that has been happening throughout the year. Of course, the Kingdom of Bhutan news, the news coming out of Paraguay, El Salvador mining Bitcoin, Russia legalizing cryptocurrency mining as well. So all this news, we want to get Frank's thoughts on all this. So guys, stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're going to hit we'll be right back. All right, here we go. Special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment.
Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, everybody, scan the QR code on your screen. That's how it'll take you to the Foundation Devices website. Not your keys, not your cheese. Anyways, I want to get Frank's thoughts on this. This was making quite a splash. Saylor also was nudging the CEO of Microsoft and basically said, look, to use Saylor's words, not mine, if you want to make the next $1 trillion for Microsoft shareholders, call me. And of course, you know, this happened on the 25th. 4 days later, Bitcoin's on the verge of potentially making an all-time high, $72,816 currently at the time of recording. Anyways, I do want to read this. And I believe this came from the Microsoft press release. Anyways, it says Microstrategy, which like Microsoft is a technology company, but unlike Microsoft holds Bitcoin on its balance sheet, has had its stock outperform Microsoft this year by 313%. Despite doing only a fraction of the business that Microsoft has. And they're not alone. The institutional and corporate adoption of Bitcoin is becoming more commonplace. Microsoft's second largest shareholder, BlackRock, offers its clients a Bitcoin ETF. So, I mean, Frank, when I saw this, I said, you know, this might be the first domino to fall. What are your thoughts on this? Was this as consequential as, you know, as perhaps I'm perceiving it to be? Do you think this was inevitable? Is the door slowly closing? Is the opportunity almost gone? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's a technical rule that you can't do in other countries. If you're, as a stakeholder, have a small position in Microsoft, you can have that put on the proxy. So management and the board I don't believe are sponsoring, you know, go buy Bitcoin. They're voting against it, but you have this right to have that put on the proxy, which that itself is a game changer from a regulatory. I wouldn't be surprised to see the regulators to come out and try to change that. You can't do that. So you can buy 100 shares of many companies and call them up that they have to put that on their proxy. So it's a technical issue.
Oh, and what's your perspective on Saylor attempting to nudge the Microsoft CEO?
He's brilliant. He's brilliant what he's doing to wake up these giants on having it on their balance sheet. That's what he is. And that's why Hive hodls as much of its Bitcoin as possible. And we have 2,700 on our balance sheet.
And could we talk a little bit about that? Because that, what you just said, some other mining companies have not followed that in terms of the Bitcoin accumulation strategy. I'm not the CEO of a public company, but I am the CEO of a small Bitcoin media company. We have a very similar strategy, maybe not to those volumes, but stack as much Bitcoin as you can. It is literally a cheat code. So could we talk a little bit about that, right? Let's talk about the Hive Bitcoin accumulation strategy, why it is a cheat code, what are the benefits of it? And again, other mining companies are not necessarily doing this. They're selling the Bitcoin as soon as they mine it. Frank?
Yeah, I think Irene Energy is probably the biggest in selling everything that they produce. And I think, is it TeraWolf is the other one, is that have over $1 billion market caps. They sell all their coins. CleanSpark used to sell all their coins, and now they're accumulating, which is sort of a positive dimension. I think that it's just, if you believe, I know from the world of gold, the gold companies in the 90s that hold as much gold as possible that they produced traded at a higher valuation. They traded at a higher valuation of book value. They had more price discovery with retail investors. Institutions are only attracted if you have a lot of minerals buying and trading your particular stock. And particularly Rob McEwen in the building of Goldcorp used to have brown paper bag lunches in downtown Toronto for the shareholders, and go underground and sit at an open area and discuss the world of gold. And his following was so great. So I think from that end, when we went public, we made a decision that we were going to hodl. At one time, we were 6% of the Ethereum network. We were hodling a lot of Ethereum. We sold it all. As soon as they went to proof of stake, we're out of there. The only mechanism that I believe is proof of work. And it's another reason why I'm such a big believer of Bitcoin and it's your uniqueness.
100%, and I'm so glad that you said that, right? Which you're a fan of proof of work, and again, I think Bitcoin is the only serious proof of work digital asset standing. Now, this wasn't the case when we got in 2017. I mean, we all lived through the fork wars, right? A lot of uncertainty in that era. A lot of other, let's say, more popular proof of work coins. Clearly, 7 years later or so, roughly. Clearly there's a winner from my perspective. And I think that winner is Bitcoin. That wasn't the case back in 2017. It was, let's just say it was a lot more uncertain. And a lot of things have changed. Frank?
As a business person, when you were mining Ethereum, it was always much more profitable than Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining will have these waves of big profit margin. Everyone jumps into mining, your margins are taken away. And Ethereum was always at the last halving. We always made money, and we had that big hodl. I always looked at Ethereum when it used the mechanism of proof of work was like silver is to gold. Bitcoin goes up 10%, Ethereum's going up 15%. Bitcoin falls 10%, Ethereum is going to fall 15%. Very similar psychology of trading between the two of them. But since they've gone to proof of stake, they've destroyed their ecosystem. All the minerals are gone. And that differential between Bitcoin and Ethereum is huge. So I'm such a big believer in the proof of work mechanism.
Absolutely. Opti, I want to get your take before we move on to the culture and focus on Hive digital technologies.
Yeah, well, really, I kind of want to just tee up Frank with another question and kind of pick his brain with his expertise. And it's more on the lines of, how long do you think it's going to take other big public companies to follow the MicroStrategy strategy? I know these conversations are happening. You don't need to expose too much information if there is any on the back end. But what's your thoughts on the time frame of other people adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet? Some of the biggest companies in the world. Do you think it's going to happen quicker than we think, or they're going to, obviously go through the paces and then make sure that their fiduciary responsibility and shareholders are happy before they do all of that?
I think if you're a technology company or you're a consumer products company where you're taking just a direct use for credit cards, et cetera, like you see out of Europe, a lot of the high-end luxury brands are now accepting Bitcoin to sell you your LVMH purse. And I think that they're the ones that should be hodling that Bitcoin rather than immediately converting to sell it to get cash, get euros or US dollars. I think that there's particular technology companies which are in that ecosystem of, but it will take time because the banking industry and the banking lobbyists, they're very strong and they're the envy of Tether is huge. You got to think that Tether makes more money than the $10 trillion asset manager BlackRock. That's mind-boggling. They're doing over 50 million revenue per employee. NVIDIA is 3.5 million. Apple is around 2.2 million. I'm really proud to say, Hive is over 5 million. But when we look at gold royalty companies, and that was always the original strategy to make Hive more like the gold royalty companies, the premier company would be Franco-Nevada. It's 30 million in revenue per employee. But Tether is 50 million. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. And so coming back on the idea of holding Bitcoin, that if you're a corporation that taking in US dollars for selling a product, if you have free cash flow, I think your free cash flow should be holding your Bitcoin. If you don't have free cash flow, I understand you got to pay salaries and electrical bills, everything else. But as a smart business person, you want to be generating free cash flow. And out of that free cash flow, a portion should be dedicated to owning Bitcoin. And if you're a gold miner, you should be owning some of that product you have if you have that free cash flow.
100%. 100%. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's 2,000 of you guys watching live. If you guys are enjoying the show, smash that like button. Consider subscribing. You're listening to Simply Bitcoin. Of course, our special guest today, Frank Holmes, Executive Chairman, Hive Digital Technologies. We're going to talk about Hive right now during the culture segment, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Before we jump into the discussion, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners on the app. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. It's the number one resource that you want to download if you're traveling, you're going to a Bitcoin conference, you don't know any Bitcoiners around you. You pull up the Orange Pill app, has a really clever geographical feature, and it will allow you to connect with fellow Bitcoiners near you and send them a message directly. It's one of the best ways to reach me. Download the Orange Pill app today, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video description. All right, everybody, let's talk all things Hive. Opti, all yours.
Yeah, actually, we're definitely going to get to Hive, but Frank was saying something, teasing something for us in the beginning. You did mention Bitcoin is going to be likened to Andy Warhol paintings. And before we set the stage for everything Hive, you did drop a bomb on us earlier, and why you think the journey to Bitcoin to $1 million is inevitable. And I think our audience would love that, and then we'll cover everything Hive. So, Frank, why do you think Bitcoin is going to $1 million? What is your thesis here?
I'm a quant analyst, and when you look at mathematical rules and laws, like everyone knows Moore's law, there's also Metcalfe's law and Metcalfe's law of adoption. So when you create scarcity and you have people value and believing in a piece of art, or and I'll give you a classic example, this happened in diamonds, then the prices grow exponentially. And so what new technologies come along for the Bitcoin ecosystem has been ordinals. And ordinals figured a way to basically put on a Satoshi a piece of art. And what you found is that if you own special numbers, and one Bitcoin is worth 100 million Satoshis. So what is a Satoshi worth? 0.0007 cents. What is a Bitcoin worth when Satoshis hit 1 penny, just 1 penny? Bitcoin's worth $1 million. Well, that's so far away. Well, we have some of those special Satoshis, and we were offered for a handful of them $250,000 because those numbers were at an important halving event, like the last halving, or they could be at any epic event, like the day that Bitcoin makes or the hour it makes an all-time high. Those Bitcoins and those Satoshis within there have a special valuation that's put on people that want to send art. So classic is, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I would like to have a painting of her when she turned 1 and then 2. So I would want a Satoshi on her birthday every year attached. And I'll pay $10 for that Satoshi, not a penny, $10 for someone to go get it. Well, what does that mean? Has that ever happened before? Absolutely. Look at Mao paintings by Warhol. He came out every year for simplicity, say 1,000 prints, $1,000 purple. Next year, pink Mao. Next year, a green Mao. Those paintings went to $50,000. The original piece went to $250,000. And now everyone's anti-China, and all of a sudden the value of those have gone down. But Queen Elizabeth, because she passed away, her paintings went to all-time highs. It's recognizing that. And this happened in the world of diamonds. When diamonds first came out, only 3% of Americans believe in diamonds would be a tangible gift for commitment, intangible, called love. Those diamonds were worth $10 a carat. They went to $10,000 a carat. And now 80% of men and women, especially women, expect you two guys to give them a diamond because you said you want to marry them. If you don't give them a diamond, well, they don't believe you. De Beers did it again in Japan in the 60s. And all of a sudden, from 3% went up to 80% of Japanese women expect a diamond for commitment of something tangible and intangible. Once you recognize that, then those special SAT numbers have this uniqueness of love. They are attached to love. They're attached to a photograph, and love is unlimited. So I just think that people will come out to say they want something green. I see some Bitcoin maxis are always don't believe that, but NVIDIA said that they want to deal with us because we are green. When we launched our own ASIC chip with Intel, they approached us because we were only green. So if you're talking about adoption and more people buying in, well, what happens when an organization like NVIDIA says they're going to start owning Bitcoin, but they're only going to have green Bitcoin because that's what they believe in. And it's recognizing that Bitcoin capped at 21 million coins, 94% have been mined, creates the perfect opportunity like a storm for Bitcoin to trade much higher.
Interesting. A couple things. I want to double back to the Steve Jobs quote that you mentioned, right, about connecting the dots. Very interesting story because it allows you. It's like real world example, and then you're seeing that same pattern play out in Bitcoin, like you did with gold, and you say, "Oh, I've seen this before," and then you're starting to see the same thing as it relates to the art stuff. So interesting. And I do want to give a shout out. We have over 2,000 live viewers right now, and we're about to dive into everything Hive. So I'm going to hand it off to Opti. I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Frank. So let's talk everything Hive here. Of course, we have some stats here for everyone, and you can jump off after this. First public miner with an AI strategy. You're diversifying into high-powered computing. Like you mentioned, NVIDIA preferred partner. So for those that don't know out there in our audience, what is Hive? What is your goals? And maybe even tease, like, where do you think Hive will be in the next couple of years, and what your roadmap is?
Our roadmap is, after we expand in a year from now, we'll be 2% of the global network in production. And we think that other opportunities are coming to us that we could be 3 or 4%. But right now, what we control is the journey to having 2% of the global network and continue to hold as much Bitcoin as possible. On our HPC strategy, we think that's a $1 billion business on its own. To give you a classic right now, you're making around 12 cents an hour on Bitcoin mining. That's all. It's 12 cents an hour on each of these best performing chips. On our NVIDIA chips and our AI business, we're making $1 an hour.
Wow.
So we see that as a huge growth opportunity for our uniqueness. And because we were the biggest public miner mining Ethereum, we have GPU experience. So when you drive a Porsche, that's like driving that's a GPU. Different technical skills, etc. ASIC chips are like Ford or Bronco trucks. And so it requires more technical experience managing GPU chips, and we have that. So today we're throwing off about $10 million of free cash flow from repurposing our Ethereum, from mining Ethereum as we repurpose going into the AI business. And we think that in a year from now, it'll be 50 million is where our plans are. But what Bitcoin miners have to recognize is that it's much more complex than some of these other companies that use it to get their stock. It's a stock promotion for me. It's very difficult because you're building a brain. People will pay you more per hour if you have certain cables, because they know for coding the value of the cables between the NVIDIA chips. So we get a super micro server, which has some CPU chips on it. We load up our NVIDIA chips, and the cables that hook it all up are valuable, that they're worth 10 cents an hour more. So all this has been learning experience for me in the past year. But what we see is that when you want to build a data center for Bitcoin mining, you have to think it's $1 million a megawatt. When you're going to go into HPC for AI, it's $10 million a megawatt just to build the building. Now you got to buy the equipment, but that revenue per hour is much greater. So Hive wants to participate in the super tidal wave of the adoption globally of digital money and digital wealth, such as Bitcoin, and also AI, and using AI to help us be better miners and how we use energy. Like right now, we've been able to go and mine some of these, as people like to call them, the shit coins, and we were too big, but we can immediately convert into Bitcoin. That's more profitable. So in any time we see where someone else has got a new coin that's proof of work, we could come in to mine that because the margins, the returns are higher. We use AI to help us to navigate through all those coins, but in seconds, they're converted to Bitcoin because that's all we want to own on our balance sheet.
Gotcha. Interesting. So, and I want to tell you, I want to ask you something, Frank. So let's talk about the relationship between AI and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like one of the only internet native currencies. And if AI scales to a point where it's artificial intelligence and it wants to use an internet native currency, obviously Bitcoin becomes one of the best choices for it.
Absolutely. It's part of that Metcalfe's law that adoption takes place. So if Microsoft starts to adopt, then what we're seeing, and remember Eric Buchanan was speaking at the conference Plan B in Lugano, and he did a wonderful presentation of what happens when Vanguard comes in. It's just a matter of time when Vanguard all of a sudden comes in, and they have 3% of their fund flows are registered investment advisors. Well, there's 45,000 registered investment advisors through America, and they're very significant in the ETF ecosystem. And they've been very significant in buying these other Bitcoin ETFs. When Vanguard turns on that juice, well, they're just under BlackRock in size. So there'll be these inflection points where things go exponentially, and then they'll go sideways, and then they'll go exponentially in that adoption process.
Gotcha. Opti, we have some more questions lined up, don't we?
Yeah, I got some good stuff over here. So I also, we were talking about your roadmap, and I know this is maybe I hope I'm not leaking anything here, but you were telling us about building a 100 megawatt hydro facility in Paraguay and targeting 12 exahashes in 2025. That's incredible. So you want to talk about maybe your choice of why you went to Paraguay, and then explain a little bit of that, what facility you're building out there?
Well, two things happen in the world, or maybe three things about energy. One, Putin invades Ukraine. Immediately, energy prices around the world go up 1 penny. There's no invasion here. Just all of a sudden, that fear and stress shows up. Canada comes out with announcements that they have to have a way to review all data centers. It doesn't matter if it's HPC. Sweden puts up 100% tax on the energy because they're all fearful of what happened there. So it's recognizing that these events have this rippling effect around the world. What's really positive this year is AWS buys uranium, nuclear energy. They spend 650 million for 950 megawatts. Well, that's a game changer. All of a sudden, it's renewable energy, and all the anti-nuclear people are quiet because AWS is all of a sudden saying, we've done all the work on this. And we're seeing new nuclear rules coming out for these micro-nuclear centers. So I think that these events take place that create this sort of quantum leap of adoption for energy. And Paraguay comes along and they have green energy. And I think that it was disappointing that they put a tax or a tariff on Bitcoin miners because of the negative narrative. And what you find out when you go there is that New York banks tell the Paraguayan banks that if they have any Bitcoin mining clients, they will shut them off from international currency movement. That's what you see is the overreach of the banking lobbying group of doing everything to try to stifle and hurt the industry. But nevertheless, we said, where can we get green energy? The expansion of 100 megawatts in Sweden, not with their attitude towards just all data centers. In Canada is the same way. It's hard to get this stable green energy. Wind and solar are not as stable. You end up having to use natural gas if there's no sunshine and there's no wind, or massive batteries. So they became the alternative. What I found in my journey was they've been selling energy to these other countries and there's no pay. Argentina owed them for 2 years, and they owe them 200 million. They just gave them 100 million. Well, Bitcoin is a savior. Bitcoin gives them foreign dollars every month. And what are we seeing? What some of these rogue countries want to get in Bitcoin mining because they want US dollars. That's Venezuela. That is Russia doing anything to get access to Bitcoin, to get access to US dollars, that mechanism. But what does it do for the government of Paraguay? They don't have to sell their energy for 1 penny and not get paid. All of a sudden, we become the ability to help the government run their budgets, their energy company. So I'm thrilled about being sort of that white knight within these countries.
I love that. I love it. And again, I think it's Bitcoin that enables this, right, Frank? Like it's your expertise. You go in there, you use proof of work, you use Bitcoin, the benefits of Bitcoin to come to these countries. And honestly, like if we're really like, you're essentially providing an alternative to an IMF loan. I mean, like if like it is an alternative. This is an alternative funding mechanism for a lot of these countries. And a lot of these governments. And that's extremely exciting because it gives countries alternative choices. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the world. My humble opinion. I might be wrong here, but that's my take.
So do I agree.
Opti, any more questions?
Yeah, well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Hive's hodling strategy. You guys are holding over 2,600 Bitcoin, and now we're entering into what looks like the next leg up in the bull run. So let's just drop some bullish takes. Of course, you guys are hodling your Bitcoin, and where do you think we're going right now? And what do you think is, from a mining perspective, what this bull run's going to mean? Going from the end of 2024 into 2025?
I think we have to deal with what happens if Trump doesn't win. That reality, we'll get a big correction. What would happen if they make Gensler, he wants to be the Secretary Treasurer? If he does that, what will that do to the dollar? How will he weaponize the IRS? All these things are questions that people ask themselves, that would be the big correction that you would take place. If Trump wins, I think it quickly accelerates to $100,000 in the adoption and the comfort that this is a unique, it's such a unique asset to protect humanity. It's to protect freedom of rights. It really is so significant when you travel around the world and you start to realize how hard it is to move money. You saw when we were in Switzerland, what the bank wants to charge. It's a minimum 5%. It's a 5% commission. You want a 500 Swiss franc. Swiss franc was a part of the dollar before COVID, and now it's trading at a 120 premium. And if you, in some of these ATMs, that if you want to get cash out, they wanted a 13% commission spread plus the 5%. I mean, it's outrageous. So how do you move money between countries that you are, as a citizen, have to leave, or you move to another place? I think that Bitcoin is that solution. And I think that's more inclusive, and I think it's much more protective of financial human rights.
100%. Yeah, it empowers the individual, the likes of which has never been seen before in human history, protects them from the devastating effects of inflation. 100%.
And you know, Dennis Porter gave a great presentation at the conference that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of America is rules-based. And that's what makes it so powerful. And if you think about the Swiss, the cantons have tremendous power, and they have a very strong, just like in America, the 50 states have tremendous powers. And so he was going on with this rules-based constitution, and Bitcoin is rules-based. And both are there to protect your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, how you want to spend your money, where you want to spend your money. And I thought it was a very profound presentation that Dennis Porter, and I don't know when they're going to allow people to be able to watch the video presentations, but he was, and Eric Buchanan did exceptionally informative and timely presentations.
Yeah, absolutely. Dennis is a good friend, and he's done incredible work, specifically on the state level, going to individual states and getting the right to mine and the right to self-custody in law, which depending, Frank, you brought up a really good point. Let's see how this election ends up. Like, we know how the Biden administration and the Harris administration feel about the industry. Look at the last 3.5 years. And of course, we know what Trump promised the industry, of course, at the Bitcoin conference, and all the dinners and fundraising events that he's had as well. So I think it is going to be very impactful, the results of this upcoming election, and I think it's there's ramifications for it. And I think that if it goes the Kamala route, this is where the state level regulation comes into play, and this is where Dennis's work goes a really, really long way. And he's put in a tremendous amount of effort and energy into it. So definitely shout out to Dennis. But I do want to give a shout out to our guest, of course, the chairman of Hive,
and co-founder.
Digital. Hive Digital Technologies.
Hive Digital Technologies. Executive chairman and co-founder Frank Holmes. Frank Holmes, thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, Nico. Let's let.
Yeah, we'll give him the final words.
I was gonna say, come on.
Frank, do you have? He wants to show the T-Rex. There we go. Frank, do you have any final thoughts for the audience today?
Yeah, the most important thing is really to have a positive mindset. It's for a growth mindset. There's lots of great research that came from a leading Stanford professor and MIT came out with this research that you see opportunities better. You can connect the dots better, as Steve Jobs said. If you have a really negative, you'll miss opportunities. And it's not good for your health. It's not good for your energy. You two guys have phenomenal positive energy.
I appreciate it. Well, Frank, thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, go check out Hive. The ticker is HIVE. It's publicly traded on the NASDAQ. All right, guys.
That's why we have the gold buzz. It's the gold B.
You can't miss it. You guys have some of the best merch in the game. I definitely have a couple Hive hats at home for sure.
And Nico, we're inching as we speak closer to 73K. So we didn't break all-time high on the show, but it looks like we're inching closer to 73K. Love to see it.
Awesome.
So the Satoshis for this show by the end of 3 o'clock today, Texas time, 4 o'clock New York, makes a new high. These will be more valuable.
There you go. Boom. All right, guys, if you guys enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. We'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Until then, I'm your host, Nico. Our guest for today, Frank Holmes. And, of course, my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. Love you all. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.
Brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.